Yeah, we sat down and we cried when we remembered Jerusalem. We were sick, Lord, near to dying. Oh,
Shalom, shalom, family. Welcome to another Bible study, another Bible class. My name is Uziah Lewy. I'm one of the teachers of Congregation D.C.B, CHOKMAH, located in the Red Hook section of Brooklyn, New York. Thanking the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob for life, food, clothing, and shelter, the Creator, for all of our lives, praying that the Most High God be with us, even on this first day of the week, that the Creator will watch over us, protect us, keep us from all harm seen and unseen, that He will continue to bless our thoughts and our minds, that He will heal us from any maladies or any sicknesses that we might have, and that He continue to bless us with knowledge, wisdom, and above all, understanding. Thanking all of you for tuning in. Don't forget to like the video, subscribe to the channel if you haven't yet. That's the way that you'll be able to leave messages on the chat. And also share the link, right? Do all those things, help us out. Let this video get out there, let the algorithm actually pick it up, and let more people get to listen to the Word of God and the breakdown, in the simplest form that we could get of the commandments and the laws that the Most High God left here for us to follow. So thank you all once again for joining us. Give me a 1 in the room if the volume and the video is clear. Please give me a 1 in the room. Thanking the Creator of heaven and earth. As we approach the fast of the 5th month, right? Tisha B'Av, we will be going into a lesson. Well, the rabbi will be going into a lesson and explaining why is it that some people do observe that fast. So without any further ado, I'll pass it on to my brother, Rabbi Chief Binyamin. How are you, Rabbi?
I'm doing good, and hopefully you are also giving praise and honor to the Most High for all of our lives and this opportunity that He has given us to call upon His name and to even open up His word to study this day, and praying that He would bless us all with knowledge, wisdom, and understanding as we proceed to move forward with our Bible study this day. We do, as mentioned, invite everyone to join in with the conversation. And you can also share the video with your family and your friends. This weekly Bible study is open to all of those that utilize the Bible as the foundation of their belief. So we do ask that you would join in with your comments. You could also have questions. Each week we do have a different topic, a different subject, mostly dealing with the commandments, the statutes, and the judgments that God has laid out for us to observe that are written within the Holy Scriptures. And then we'll have topics that are suggested by, those that are watching. And then during certain points in the year, the subject would be related to that point in time. So being that the observance of the fast of the 5th month will be coming up this week, we're going to be discussing that, just to give a little background on where the concept came from, the reasoning for the observance of it, and so on. So just feel free to, again, share, subscribe to the channel, like, and you can feel free to leave your comments and your questions in regards to this subject or on any other subject. You can suggest topics or subjects that we should go into in the future, and we'll do the best that we can to get back to those. Same way, if you're watching this video, of course, after it is live, you can put a comment or a question, and we'll do the best that we can to respond to your comment or question as well. And you can do the same for any of the previous sessions that we have had with our Bible study. So again, we are grateful to the Most High for this opportunity that He has given us, in order that we may observe his commandments, his statutes, and his judgments. And just giving the disclaimer, as we are going to have a discussion about the fast of the 5th month, this is not something that is commanded, but we're going to get into the discussion of it in regards to why it is observed, why it is acknowledged, and again, the reasoning for it. So just as we did last month, because when we were speaking about the fast of the 4th month a few weeks ago, we're going to basically start the discussion in the same place, where we're going to go into the book of Zechariah, beginning in chapter 7. The prophet Zechariah was speaking to the children of Israel as they had already returned to Jerusalem and into the borders of the kingdom of Judah overall, starting with the reign of Cyrus, the Persian, and then Zechariah is prophesying or speaking to the children of Israel during the reign of Darius, who was another king of the Persians. So again, this is after the Babylonian dispersion. This is after the destruction of the house of God by the captain of the guard of Nebuchadnezzar in the 5th month, which we're going to be talking about shortly. This is after the captivity and the children of Israel that were in the kingdom of Judah, or the southern kingdom, were taken into captivity in Babylon. Some did flee and go into Egypt, and then even go further south into Africa. But those that were dispersed in Babylon, Babylon was eventually taken over by the Medes, and then the Medes, or that empire, was eventually taken over by the Persians. And then Cyrus, who was one of the kings of the Persians, was responsible, after he merged the kingdom of the Medes and the Persians together, he was responsible for setting up the decree to send the children of Israel, or allow them the opportunity to return to Jerusalem, to return to the kingdom of Judah, in order to rebuild the house of God, to rebuild Jerusalem overall. And when we return to our discussion of the book of Isaiah from chapters 40 up until 66, we'll also be able to speak about Cyrus within that, because he's mentioned prophetically within those chapters as well. So as the history continues to move forward, the children of Israel were allowed the opportunity to return to the land, to rebuild the house of God, to rebuild Jerusalem. But there were people that were of foreign nations that were occupying the land while the children of Israel were not there. Or not in control of the land, actually. So that when the children of Israel returned and they were rebuilding the house of God and they were rebuilding Jerusalem, rebuilding the walls of Jerusalem, that they sent letters to the king at that time, and they were also to have the work stopped. And also while they were there, they were doing what they can to stop the children of Israel from rebuilding the house of God. And to an extent, they were successful. So then it wasn't until the reign of Darius, the king of the Persians, that the house was allowed to be rebuilt by Darius, and that was actually within his reign. So that was just to give a little background of the history of Zechariah. So Zechariah is one of the prophets of the Most High God, who was, again, prophesying or speaking to the children of Israel during the reign of Darius, the king of the Persians. And so this is where we are going to begin having our discussion in terms of the fast of the 5th month. So it says here, and it came to pass in the 4th year of King Darius, that the word of Jehovah came unto Zechariah in the 4th day of the 9th month, even in Kislev, when Bethel-Sar-Ezer and Regem-Melech and his men had sent to entreat the favor of Jehovah, and to speak unto the priests of the house of Jehovah of hosts, and the prophet, saying, should I weep in the 5th month, separating myself as I have done these so many years? So you had some men of the children of Israel that approached Zechariah and was asking, should they be weeping, or, as we go on with our discussion, fasting during the 5th month? The 5th month representing the month that the house of God was destroyed, by the Babylonians, and then also represents the month that the children of Israel were dispersed or taken into captivity by the Babylonians after the house of God was burnt and after the city of Jerusalem was destroyed. So that 5th month represented, they also represented the beginning of the 70 years that the Most High God had prophesied or had spoken to Jeremiah to prophesy to the children of Israel of the captivity that they would endure in Babylon, which extended, throughout those 70 years up until the rebuilding of the house of God in the 70th year after the house was destroyed. So within, during the time of those 70 years, you had Daniel, during that time who was in Babylon and the visions that he received. You have here the prophet Zechariah, you have Haggai, you have prophets such as Malachi during this time. And then again, in the 70th year, as the Most High God has specified, that's when the house was rebuilt, the 70th year after the house was destroyed. So, but during this period of time, within these 70 years, when the construction of the house of God was halted, this is when the people were approaching the prophet Zechariah to ask him, should they continue to fast or should they continue to weep, just to be specific? Should they continue to weep in the 5th month? And the reason why they were asking this question is because they were already allowed to return to the land. Even though the house was not rebuilt, there were certain things that were done to stop them from rebuilding the house. They were still living in the kingdom of Judah again. They were still allowed to return to the land of Israel overall. So they were asking the question, should they still continue to weep during the 5th month, as they were doing all the years of the captivity? And just to remind everybody, it's a convention, because you would hear us mentioning the name of God in the places where they appear in the Holy Scriptures. And in your English text, you'll see the words, the Lord. And in the Hebrew, you have God's name, which is represented by the Hebrew consonants Yod, He, Waw, He, which corresponds to the English characters YHWH. So as we're having our discussion week by week, you'll hear us pronounce the name as Yehovah, and you'll hear also many people around the world pronounce the name as Yahweh. And that is the name of God. We did have a discussion on that, many weeks ago during our Bible study. But just to give some background on why you would hear us mentioning the name of God. So as we're reading, we'll, instead of reading the Lord, we'll say the name of God in the appropriate places, so we know the God that is speaking to us and the God that we are speaking about. So the people are asking, should they continue to weep in the 5th month, as they have done these many years while they were in captivity in Babylon, and even as they have been allowed to return to the land to rebuild the house of God and to reconstruct Jerusalem. So Yehovah God responds in verse 4. Then came the word of Yehovah of hosts unto me, saying, speak unto all the people of the land and to the priests, saying, when you fasted and mourned in the 5th and in the 7th month, even these 70 years, did ye at all fast unto me, even to me? And when you eat and when you did drink, are ye not that they that eat and they that drink? Should ye not hearken to the words which Yehovah had proclaimed by the former prophets, when Jerusalem was inhabited and in prosperity, and the cities thereof round about her, and the south and the lowland were inhabited? So God's response is, when the people were fasting, they weren't fasting for Yehovah God. They were fasting for themselves. The same way as when we eat for ourselves. So God is basically saying the fast that they were doing was only benefiting themselves, just the same way, again, as when we eat, it benefits us. So because, as it mentioned in verse 5, the people were fasting in the 5th month. They were also fasting in the 7th month. And this fast of the 7th month, which is not Yom Kippur, but when we get to that time of the year, we'll get into the discussion of the fast of the 7th month. But they were fasting these 70 years from the destruction of the house of God, the dispersion of the children of Israel into Babylon. All of these 70 years, the 70 years that Yehovah God had prophesied and spoken that the children of Israel will be in captivity via the Babylonians, and of course afterwards to the Medes and then the Persians, that the children of Israel were fasting in the 5th month to commemorate the destruction of the house of God, and also to commemorate the dispersion into Babylon, into that kingdom. And it continues saying, and the word of Yehovah came unto Zechariah, saying, thus have Yehovah of hosts spoken, saying, Execute true judgment and show mercy and compassion every man to his brother, and oppress not the widow, nor the fatherless, the stranger, nor the poor, and let none of you devise evil against his brother in your heart. But they refused to attend and turned the stubborn shoulder and stopped their ears that they might not hear. Yea, they made their hearts as an adamant stone, lest they should hear the law and the words which Jehovah of hosts had sent by his spirit by the hand of the former prophet. Therefore came their great wrath from Jehovah of hosts. So Jehovah God is saying that it's because of the evil ways that the children of Israel were performing during that time. That's why the Babylonians were allowed to come in, burn the house of God, and take the children of Israel into captivity. And even beyond fasting, the fasting is only on behalf of those that are fasting, but along with the fast is not just fasting and weeping because of an event that took place, but along with that, the ways of those that are fasting and those that are weeping have to be up to par. So those of us that fast, those of us that weep, those of us that pray, those of us that cry out to the Most High God, not just in the 5th month, but for anything that we want in our lives, it's not just about those particular acts that would allow the Most High to respond to us. It's when we turn our ear to his commandments and we do the things that were mentioned earlier and executing true judgment and showing mercy and compassion and making sure that we relieve the oppressed widow, fatherless, stranger, and poor, and that we don't devise evil one against another. Those are the things that we have to do in order to obtain favor and the attention of the Most High God, along with the fasting and the praying and the crying and the things that will be done. So it actually is more important to do right and to do good than to do the fasting. But this is the response that the Most High God has given to the people that are asking this question. And continue from verse 13. And it came to pass that as he called and that they would not hear, so they shall call, and I will not hear, says Jehovah of hosts. But I will scatter them with a whirlwind among the nations whom they have not known. Thus the land was desolate after them, so that no man passed through nor returned, for they laid the pleasant land desolate. So God is mentioning that the reason why the land was desolate for those 70 years, why the house was destroyed in the first place, and why the children of Israel were scattered is because they didn't hearken to the words that the former prophets, the prophets that existed before Zechariah, that Jehovah God sent. And this would include Jeremiah, this would include Hosea, this would include Isaiah, this would include all of those prophets that were sent initially to the children of Israel to warn them about the impending danger of the Babylonians if they did not turn their ways from evil and do good. So now we're in chapter 8, and it says, and the word of Jehovah of hosts came, saying, thus says Jehovah of hosts, I am jealous for Zion with great jealousy, and I am jealous for her with great fury. Thus says Jehovah, I return unto Zion and will dwell in the midst of Jerusalem, and Jerusalem shall be called the city of truth, and the mountain of Jehovah of hosts, the holy mountain. Thus says Jehovah of hosts, there shall yet old men and old women sit in the broad places of Jerusalem, every man with his staff in his hand, for very age. And the broad places of the city shall be full of boys and girls playing in the broad places thereof. Thus says Jehovah of hosts, if it be marvelous in the eyes of the remnant of this people in those days, should it also be marvelous in mine eyes, says Jehovah of hosts? Thus says Jehovah of hosts, behold, I will save my people from the east country and from the west country, and I will bring them, and they shall dwell in the midst of Jerusalem, and they shall be my people, and I will be their God in truth and in righteousness. So even as many of the children, actually some of the children of Israel were allowed to return to the kingdom of Judah, allowed to initially rebuild the house of God, rebuild Jerusalem, there were still many of the children of Israel that were still dispersed around the world. So God is saying that it would take, mass righteousness and mass goodness of the entire nation for all of the dispersed, because that really is the current goal. Along with keeping the commandments, statutes, and judgments of God, the current goal is gaining the attention of God so that all of the dispersed will be gathered. So during this time, in the time of Zechariah, there were some that were allowed to return to Jerusalem, but yet you still have many that were dispersed. And God is focusing his attention on those that are still dispersed and not just on those that were allowed the opportunity to return to the land. So God is speaking to them in that manner to let them know that there are still more out there and that there was still more that were dispersed, but there will come a time when all will be returned and all will be redeemed, but it would take righteousness and goodness for this to happen. It would take justice in order for this to happen. As it mentioned that in the end of verse 8, in truth and in righteousness. Then it continues saying, thus says Jehovah of hosts, let your hands be strong, yea, that here in these days, these words from the mouth of the prophets that were in the day that the foundation of the house of Jehovah of hosts was laid, even the temple that it might be built. So this is talking about those that initially returned, and they were able to start the rebuilding process of the house of God and lay down the foundation. So even though the work was halted, even during the point that Zechariah is speaking about, the foundation has started to be rebuilt the generation prior. For before those days, there was no hire for man, nor any hire for beast, neither was there any peace to him that went out or came in because of the adversary. For I set all men, every one against his neighbor. But now I will not be unto the remnant of this people, as in the former days, says Jehovah of hosts. For as the seed of peace, the vine shall give her fruit, and the ground shall give her increase, and the heavens shall give their dew. And I will cause the remnant of this people to inherit all these things. And it shall come to pass, as ye were cursed among the nations, O house of Judah and house of Israel, so will I save you, and ye shall be a blessing. Fear not, let your hands be strong. For thus says Jehovah of hosts, as I proposed to do evil unto you when your fathers provoked me, says Jehovah of hosts, and I repented not, so again do I propose in these days to do good unto Jerusalem and to the house of Judah. Fear ye not. These are the things that you shall do. Speak ye every man the truth with his neighbor, execute the judgment of truth and peace in your gates, and let none of you devise evil in your hearts against his neighbor, and love no false oath. For all these things for these are things that I hate, says Jehovah. So again, Jehovah God is repeating to the children of Israel the things that they had to do or were supposed to be doing in order for all of the children of Israel, or for the remnant of Yisrael, to return. Jehovah God is focusing on all of those that were dispersed and not just those that returned. So even though the question was asking, should they continue weeping during the 5th month? And God is responding that when they were fasting in the 5th month, they were doing it for themselves and not for him. He's mentioning the other things that actually needed to be done in order to get a response for the purpose of their weeping and fasting in the 5th month and in the 7th month, as was mentioned. Then it says here, verse 18, and the word of Jehovah of hosts came unto me, saying, thus says Jehovah of hosts, the fast of the 4th month, and the fast of the 5th, and the fast of the 7th, and the fast of the 10th shall be to the house of Judah joy and gladness and cheerful seasons. Therefore, love ye truth and peace. So what Jehovah God is saying here is that he does acknowledge the fasts that were instituted during these 70 years. Primarily, they were asking about the 5th month, the fast of the weeping that they were doing in the 5th month, because that is the month of the house of God being destroyed in the dispersion. But God acknowledges all of the other fasts that were taking place during these 70 years. The fast of the 4th month, which we spoke about a few weeks ago, when the siege of Babylon, or eventually the siege of Babylon ended because they breached the wall of Jerusalem, were able to enter in. The fast of the 10th month is when 2 years prior to that, the siege of Jerusalem actually began. And the fast of the 7th month is after the house was destroyed. And then 2 months later, the last governor or the one appointed by the Babylonians was killed. And that's when the Babylonians entered or re-entered the land of Israel and even caused even further destruction. So God is saying that these fasts that were being done will in the future be days of joy. So God does acknowledge these fasts. So that's why those that do fast during these the fast of the 4th, 5th, 7th, and 10th acknowledge it, because Jehovah God acknowledges it, as he mentions in verse 19. But in the time when the children of Israel actually return and he restores the remnant, they would no longer need to fast during these times, but these times would be days of joy and gladness. And just to continue on with the chapter before we go elsewhere. Thus says Jehovah of hosts, it shall yet come to pass that there shall come peoples and the inhabitants of many cities, and the inhabitants of one city shall go to another, saying, let us go speedily to entreat the favor of Jehovah, and to seek Jehovah of hosts I will go also. Yea, many peoples and mighty nations shall come to seek Jehovah of hosts in Jerusalem, and to entreat the favor of Jehovah. Thus says Jehovah of hosts, in those days it shall come to pass that 10 men shall take hold out of all the languages of the nations, shall even take hold of the skirt of him that is a Jew, saying, we will go with you, for we have heard that God is with you. So of course, these things, as mentioned here, from verse 19 up until the end, are things that are going to happen in the future. So Jehovah God acknowledges the fast that take place during these 4 months that he mentioned here. The children of Israel only mentioned the 5th month because that was the process that began the dispersion. Also, the destruction of the house of God was done within that month. But God mentioned all of the fasts that they were doing during this time, that as if it continues on, and that those that continue to fast during these periods, these times, there will be times of joy and gladness in the future. Now, to give a historical reference in terms of the destruction of the house of God, we're going to go to the book of 2 Kings, chapter 25, where it says, "And it came to pass in the 9th year of his reign, in the 10th month, in the 10th day of the month, that Nebuchadnezzar, king of Babylon, came, he and all his army, against Jerusalem, and encamped against it. And they built forts against it round about. So the city was besieged unto the 11th year of King Zedekiah. On the 9th day of the 4th month, the famine was sore in the city, so that there was no bread for the people of the land. Then a breach was made in the city, and all the men of war fled by night by the way of the gate between the 2 walls, which was by the king's garden. Now the Chaldeans were against the city round about, and the king went by the way of the Arabah. But the army of the Chaldeans pursued after the king and overtook him in the plains of Jericho, and all his army was scattered from him. Then they took the king and carried him up unto the king of Babylon to Riblah, and they gave judgment upon him. And they slew the sons of Zedekiah before his eyes, and put out the eyes of Zedekiah, and bound him in fetters, and carried him to Babylon. Now in the 5th month, on the 7th day of the month, which was the 19th year of King Nebuchadnezzar, king of Babylon, came Nebuzaradan, the captain of the guard, a servant of the king of Babylon, unto Jerusalem. And he burnt the house of Jehovah, the king's house, and all the houses of Jerusalem, even every great man's house burnt he with fire. And all the army of the Chaldeans that were with the captain of the guard broke down the walls of Jerusalem round about. And the residue of the people that were left in the city, and those that fell away, that fell to the king of Babylon, and the residue of the multitude, did Nebuzaradan, the captain of the guard, carry away captive. But the captain of the guard left of the poorest of the land to be vine dressers and husbandmen. And the pillars of brass that were in the house of Jehovah, and the bases and the brazen sea that were in the house of Jehovah, did the Chaldeans break in pieces, and carry the brass of them to Babylon. And the pots and the shovels and the snuffers and the pans and all the vessels of brass wherewith they ministered, they took they away. And the fire pans and the basins, that which was of gold in gold, and that which was of silver in silver, the captain of the guard took away. The 2 pillars, the 1 sea, and the bases which Solomon had made for the house of Jehovah, and the brass of all these vessels was without weight. The height of 1 pillar was 18 cubits, and the capital of brass was upon it, and the height of the capital was 3 cubits, with network and pomegranates upon the capital round about, all of brass, and like unto these had the 2nd pillar with network. And the captain of the guard took Sariah, the chief priest, and Zephaniah, the 2nd priest, and the 3 keepers of the door, and out of the city took an officer, and was set over the men of war, and 5 of them that saw the king's face, who were found in the city, and described the captain of hosts, who mustered the people of the land, and 80 men of the people of the land, they were found in the city. And Nebuzaradan, the captain of the guard, took them and brought them to the king of Babylon to Riblah. So that was just read up until that point, just to show the destruction of the house of God and what the Babylonians took away into Babylon, as they stripped the house of God of the silver, of the gold, and of the brass. And it mentioned all of these things in detail, just to show the great destruction of the house of God. When we read about the construction of the house of God by King Solomon and its great glory, it's being descriptive here to show that how that glory and that honor that of the house was now stripped away. And again, just going back to it in the 8th verse, where it says, now in the 5th month, on the 7th day of the month, which was the 19th year of King Nebuchadnezzar, king of Babylon, came Nebuzaradan, the captain of the guard, a servant of the king of Babylon, unto Jerusalem. And this is when, as in verse 9, he burnt the house of Jehovah God, as well as the king's house. So in here in 2 Kings chapter 25, it mentions that it was the 7th day of the 5th month that this took place. And also, as we did last time when we was speaking about the fast of the 4th month, we'll read because Second Kings gives the historical point of view of it. Now we're reading in Jeremiah 52 from Jeremiah's point of view, what took place from a prophetic point of view, so to speak, and not just the historical point of view. So it starts off talking about Zedekiah and his age, but just for the interest of time, we started from verse 3. For through the anger of Jehovah did come to pass in Jerusalem and Judah until he had cast them out from his presence. And Zedekiah rebelled against the king of Babylon. And it came to pass in the 9th year of his reign, in the 10th month, in the 10th day of the month, that Nebuchadrezzar, king of Babylon, came, he and all his army, against Jerusalem and camped against it. And they built forts against it round about. So the city was besieged until the 11th year of King Zedekiah. So this so far is in line with what we read in 2 Kings chapter 25. And it mentioned in the 4th month, in the 9th day of the month, the famine was sore in the city, so that there was no bread for the people of the land. Then a breach was made in the city, and all the men of war fled and went forth out of the city by night by the way of the gate between the two walls, which was by the king's garden. Now the Chaldeans were against the city round about, and they went by the way of the Arabah. But the army of the Chaldeans pursued after the king and overtook Zedekiah in the plains of Jericho, and all his army was scattered from him. Then they took the king and carried him up unto the king of Babylon to Riblah in the land of Hamath, and he gave judgment upon him. And the king of Babylon slew the sons of Zedekiah before his eyes. He slew also the prince of Judah and Riblah, and he put out the eyes of Zedekiah, and the king of Babylon bound him in fetters and carried him to Babylon and put him in prison till the day of his death. Now in the 5th month, in the 10th day of the month, which was the 19th year of King Nebuchadrezzar, king of Babylon, came Nebuzaradan, the captain of the guard, who stood before the king of Babylon into Jerusalem, and he burned the house of Jehovah and the king's house and all the houses of Jerusalem. Even every great man's house burned he with fire. So everything here is just, again, in the book of Jeremiah is what we read in the book of 2 Kings, but just as a point of reference, the only discrepancy here is the date, where in 2 Kings it mentioned that it was the 7th day of the 5th month that Nebuzaradan entered into the house of God and burned it. And here we read that it was in the 10th day of the 5th month that he did so. But everything else that you continue to read here will still be in line with everything that we read in 2 Kings chapter 25. Just wanted to point that out. And it also mentions the things that were taken out of the house in detail, and also it gives a little bit more detail of the things that were taken out of the house of God. And then it also talks about who was left behind in the territory of Judah. So when we read again 2 Kings chapter 25 and Jeremiah chapter 52, that's where we get the understanding of why the children of Israel were fasting, and why they were weeping, and why they were praying in the 5th month, because this was the month that the house of God was destroyed. Many houses in Jerusalem were destroyed, and there were captivities into Babylon in waves. This was the final wave of captives taken from Judah going into Babylon. But as it was read in the book of Zechariah, the fast of the 5th month, along with the other fasts, will again be days of, well, not again, but will be days of joy and gladness for the children of Israel. But it will be a mass response of righteousness and justice and goodness on the part of the children of Israel. So it is something that the children of Israel can look forward to. So that's why, again, as we're speaking about the fast of the 5th month, and the observance of it is not something that is required, but it is something that is acknowledged by the Most High God. And as he specified himself, that as he acknowledges it as it's being performed, he will acknowledge it in the future. And instead of a day of weeping and crying, he will turn it into a day of joy and gladness. And in terms of the reason, because again, we read it was the 7th day of the 5th month. In one chapter, we read it was the 10th day of the 5th month in another chapter. But we also know that the house of God was eventually restored and rebuilt, but destroyed again in 70 CE. And some sources say that when the Romans destroyed the second temple, or that the temple that was rebuilt, that it was done on the 9th day of the 5th month on the Hebrew calendar. So that's why today it's acknowledged as Tisha B'Av. What Tisha B'Av means, the 9th of Av, or the Av is the name of the 5th month in the Hebrew calendar. So that's why today is acknowledged on the 9th day of the 5th month because some say that it was on the 9th day of the 5th month that the second temple was destroyed. But it was all, whether it was the first temple or the second temple, was all taking place within that 5th month. So there was a time of mourning and a time of fasting and weeping that takes place during the 5th month to acknowledge that destruction of the house of God and the dispersion of the children of Israel. So with the time that we have left, we're going to open it up for questions and comments for those that may have any. Normally we did more time than usual, but normally we do 20 minutes to half an hour on the discussion of the topic, and then leave the remaining time of the hour open for comments and questions on the subject first, and then on any of the comments or questions that people may have afterwards, time permitting, we'll get into that. So for that portion, I'll return it to Chief Uziel so he can moderate that portion of it. So again, if you have any questions or any comments in regards to what we discussed today, you can feel free to do so.
Hallelujah. Torah, Rabbi. See some of the questions that we have here. Shalom, Shavuot from Palmdale, California. All praise to the Most High Yah. Shalom, Yisrael. All right, here go one question. Did Aharon die in the month of Av, the 5th month?
Yes, it mentions in the book of Numbers that he actually died on the 1st day of the 5th month. This was after Moses struck the rock, and where God said, because they didn't sanctify the name of God, that neither of them would be able to enter into the land. I'm looking for the exact verse that mentions it, but it does mention that it was the 1st day of the 5th month that Aaron died. It didn't mention the name of the month as Av. The name of the month Av came later on in history, but it does mention again here, that would be Numbers, should be Numbers 33. I'll put it up on the screen just so that people can see it. Minute. So there it is. Numbers 33, verse 38. And Aaron the priest went up into the Mount Hor at the commandment of Yahweh and died there in the 40th year after the children of Israel were come out of the land of Egypt, in the 5th month on the 1st day of the month. And Aaron was 123 years old when he died in Mount Hor. So just to answer the question, that's the scriptures that exactly point out that he died in the 5th month. So that's Numbers chapter 33, verses 38 and 39.
We got here, give me 1 second, Rabbi. Sister Abby question. This question is concerning the new covenant. Jeremiah chapter 31, verses 27 to 37. Please explain how it relates to the New Testament teaching of the new covenant. Toda Rabbah.
Okay, so we'll go there. Jeremiah chapter 31, which
verses
mentions
27 to 37.
The new covenant. So we'll jump for the question straight to verse 27, and then read from there, and then surrounding verses if necessary. So Jeremiah chapter 31, verse 27 says, "Behold, the days come, says Jehovah, that I will sow the house of Israel and the house of Judah with the seed of man and with the seed of beast." Just to start from there, because the children of Israel during this time of Jeremiah was split into two kingdoms, one known as the kingdom of Judah and the kingdom of Israel, also known as the house of Judah and the house of Israel, also known as Judah simply, which represented the southern kingdom, and Ephraim, which represented the northern kingdom. So you will hear these various terms to describe how how one nation, or the children of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob name being changed to Israel, and with one nation of 12 tribes became two kingdoms. And throughout the period of time after Solomon, the kingdom was split. You had Rehoboam, which was the head of the southern kingdom, leading Judah, and then you had Jeroboam leading the northern kingdom, representing Ephraim. And from that point on, the children of Israel acknowledged themselves as two separate kingdoms. So that's why throughout prophecy, you'll see the Most High God mention the house of Judah, the house of Israel, or the kingdom of Judah, the kingdom of Israel, because that's how they reference themselves. But God always mentions that they would actually be restored as one, because they are one. So that's why he said that they will be sewn together. Again, just to give a reference to why it mentioned that they would be sewn together. And it shall come to pass that, like as I have watched over them to pluck up and to break down and to overthrow and to destroy and to afflict, so will I watch over them to build and to plant, says Jehovah. So all of that destruction that was foretold will be turned around, and the children of Israel will be gathered by Jehovah God and redeemed and allowed to return to the land once again, which is a reference to some of the things that we just read earlier. And it says, in those days they shall say no more, the fathers have eaten sour grapes, and the children's teeth are set on edge. But every one shall die for his own iniquity. Every man that eats the sour grapes, his teeth shall be set on edge. Behold, the days come, says Jehovah, that I will make a new covenant with the house of Israel and with the house of Judah, not according to the covenant that I made with their fathers in the day that I took them by the hand to bring them out of the land of Egypt, for as much as they broke my covenant, although I was a Lord over them, says Jehovah. But this is the covenant that I will make with the house of Israel after those days, says Jehovah. I will put my law in their inward parts, and in their heart will I write it. And I will be their God, and they shall be my people. And they shall teach no more every man his neighbor and every man his brother, saying, Know Jehovah, for they shall all know me, from the least of them unto the greatest of them, says Jehovah, for I will forgive their iniquity, and their sin will I remember no more. Thus says Jehovah, he who gives the sun for a light by day, and the ordinance of the moon, and of the stars for a light by night, who stirs up the sea, that the waves thereof roar. Jehovah of hosts is his name. If these ordinances depart from before me, says Jehovah, then the seed of Israel also shall cease from being a nation before me forever. Thus says Jehovah, if heaven above can be measured, and the foundations of the earth searched out beneath, then I will also cast off all the seed of Israel for all day that I have done, says Jehovah. So these are the verses that were mentioned in the question, and it doesn't relate to the New Testament. The new covenant that the Most High God mentioned, as we read starting from verse 31, is that instead of having to send, just to paraphrase, instead of having to send prophets, instead of people having to teach other people of the commandments, statutes, and judgments of God, as Jehovah God sent Moses to teach the children of Israel, and as it mentions in the book of Deuteronomy, that after Moses, there will be other prophets that, just like Moses, that would teach the word of God. Jehovah God is saying that the new covenant, and the new covenant as mentioned here, doesn't eliminate any prior covenants, because the word of God, as we read in various places, stands forever. So as God made a covenant with King David, that there will be someone out of his lineage on the throne of Israel forever, as the Most High God made a covenant with the children of Israel, as he mentioned here, that they would always, that they would possess, or they would own or inherit the land that Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob walked through, as the Most High God made a covenant with Pinchas that he would have a covenant of peace, that the priest would be established through him, as the Most High God established various covenants, and once he has spoken it, it cannot be broken. This is just an additional covenant. So again, just thinking of the concept when it says new covenant, it does not eliminate any prior covenant. It's just an additional covenant along with the covenants that were made before. So even at the end of all of this, in verse 34, where it says that nobody will be teaching anybody else anymore, because saying know Jehovah, for everybody will know Jehovah God. It doesn't mean that as we read in other places that evil will be done away with. It's just that everybody would know for themselves the commandments, statutes, and judgments of God. There will be judges that will be in place to execute true justice and true righteousness when people do wrong, but there won't be the need of prophets to be going around circulating, telling people to know Jehovah God, because people will know the truth at that point. You know, we're living in a period in time now where people worship different gods. People are, having different ways of life that they follow. There were different religions. But in the time to come, that the Most High God is speaking about this new covenant, that the people of the earth was primarily the children of Israel, whose responsibility is to teach the inhabitants of the earth, will know Jehovah God. They will know that no other God exists. They will know the commandments, statutes, and judgments that they're supposed to be keeping. The iniquities that were performed earlier will be forgiven, and the children of Israel will be able to return to the land. And then Jehovah God makes a comparison, because the sun is always going to give us light by day, the moon will give us light by night, and the seas will always make noise or the waters will always make noise in the sea. As all of these things will continue to exist, the same way the children of Israel will always be his people, and Jehovah God will always be God to the children of Israel. And the same way that, no one could actually measure the heavens or measure the foundation of the earth. But if anybody was able to do so, of course, this is hypothetical. That's the only way that the Most High is going to cast away the seed of Israel from before him. So this new covenant that is mentioned here in Jeremiah chapter 31 is not related to what is read in the New Testament, because in the New Testament, what is read there is that there is a new savior. Those are some of the, that's one of the concepts that come up in the New Testament, that there's a new savior. Also, that savior died for the sins of the world, whereas within the passage that was just read here, in verse 29, it says, in those days, in the time to come, in those days, they shall say no more, the fathers have eaten sour grapes, and the children's teeth are set on edge. But everyone shall die for his own iniquity. Everyone that eats the sour grapes, his teeth shall be set on edge. So actually, this new covenant that is spoken about here in Jeremiah chapter 31 is actually in contrast to the New Testament and the concepts that we read there, including this one of someone dying for the sins of the world, or someone dying for people's sins overall, whereas Jehovah God is saying that everybody is going to die for their own iniquity. And we read that also in the book of Ezekiel chapter 18. But God is saying that in the future, that concept will be reiterated, that everybody will die for their own iniquity. That the concept of, when someone eats a sour grape and they feel the sting, that's the same way of iniquity. When someone commits iniquity, they feel the own sting of the iniquity that they perform. So again, just to answer the question, it is not, Jeremiah chapter 31 is not related to the New Testament. The new covenant is not related to that, but it's talking about a time to come where the Most High God would gather the children of Israel. People would know the Most High God, and they would know his word. And again, everybody would understand that they died for their own iniquity, and they will be judged as such.
Let me see here. Shalom, Chief Uzi Alewi, Chief Rabbi Binyamin. I've fasting on Shabbat days. It's a Kwadosh day to eat and celebrate and worship and praise, but fasting and praying good for me. Should I pick other days? I guess she's saying she's fasting on the Shabbat day. Or I don't know if this is a he or she, but fasting on the Shabbat day, should they pick another day to fast?
So there's no specific command that we read to fast on the Sabbath. Oh, sorry, there's no command that's specific that prohibits fasting on the Sabbath day. If Yom Kippur, which is the Day of Atonement, which we know that is a day that's to afflict ourselves, which is done by fasting. At some point, during some years, it will fall on the Sabbath day. And therefore, when it falls on the Sabbath day, fasting will be done on that particular Sabbath. So, just using that as a reference. And also, there's no verse that we can read that prohibits fasting on the Sabbath day. I'm just going to give my opinion. I can't tell anybody that you should not fast on the Sabbath day. Now, when it comes to the Sabbath day overall, however, as it was mentioned in the question, it is a holy day. It's a day to acknowledge that Jehovah God created the heavens and the earth for 6 days, ceased from all work on the seventh day, and therefore we are supposed to cease from all of our work and personal activity. When we fast, we usually fast for a reason. So now, if we're fasting on the Sabbath day, we have to acknowledge the reason of the fast that we're doing, and if that reasoning isn't in line with the observance of the Sabbath day. So that would be the only thing that I would mention that in terms of whether to fast on the Sabbath day or not. It probably would be best, depending on the reasons for the fast, to do it on another day, so that way the Sabbath day can be enjoyed for what it is, a day of joy. We read about that in the book of Isaiah, where it's a day to delight in, the day of Jehovah, which is honorable, and all of the things that go along with that. So if the reason for fasting is not in line with the holiness of the day or the concept of the Sabbath day, then that would be a reason to pick a different day. But however, there's no verse again that says that you cannot fast on the Sabbath day. Also, just to give another reference, Moses, we know he fasted for 40 days and 40 nights when he was on Mount Sinai, and of course that includes many Sabbaths. We read people, including that King David, fasted for many days when his son that he had with Bathsheba was sick. Within that would be the Sabbath day. So people, throughout scriptural reference, we see that there were fasts that did occur on the Sabbath day. And that's probably one of the reasons why there's no prohibition specifically against it. But again, we just have to think about the reason why we're fasting and make sure that it's in line with the holiness of the Sabbath day in order to determine whether it should be done on a different day or not.
I don't see any other questions here. So seems like everybody has asked all the questions. So thank you all for joining us today, because I don't see any more questions. Thank you all for joining us today. Hoping for all of you who are observing the fast that you have a good fast. And I pray that the Most High God, creator of heaven and earth, be with you all. Before I go, like I do all the time, you know that we don't ask for any kind of money for this, but we do ask for donations towards the congregation. So to all of you out there that would like to donate, you can make a donation out to us via Cash App or PayPal. A Cash App is money symbol BEIT DCB, or PayPal is our email address, info@baydcb.org. You can donate to us also at Zelle at info@baydcb.org also, or during the super chat right here in the actual in the chat here, the money symbol right next to the chat box where we text. So we thank all of you for what you do and for coming on with us and helping us out and doing all the things that we need to do to keep this thing going. And we appreciate all of your support, all of you out there. So may the Most High, creator of heaven and earth, bless each and every one of you. As I say these words, I pray that the Most High God will bless us all. Yevareka Yehovah Yishmareka. Yair Yaho Panawale Kawikuneka. Yisai Yaho Panawale Kawayasem Laka Shalom. May Yaho bless thee and keep thee. May Yaho make his face to shine upon thee and be gracious unto thee. May Yaho lift up his countenance upon thee and may he grant thee peace. Amen. Shalom, shalom. Thank you all out there for supporting the channel. Don't forget to share, like, and subscribe. And and don't forget to leave your comments and your questions. May the Most High God bless you all. Everyone have a great week. Shalom, shalom.
Let's get knowledge, wisdom, understanding. We'll do our standing. All praises to the Most High, His laws and commandments. The hot CHOKMAH BINAH here to push it through your speakers. Judgment, truth, and love should be coming from the leaders. Yeah, knowledge, wisdom, understanding. We'll do our standing. All praises to the Most High, His laws and commandments. The hot CHOKMAH BINAH here to push it through your speakers. Judgment, truth, and love should be coming from the